Do you believe in miracles? We got Fizzle in the house. Fizzle, what's good, man? Fizzle, glad to have you here.
Let's go. This the South Harmon Podcast. Glad you here today. Hit that Patreon link if you here to stay. Dynasty best ball, that's my favorite way. 40 chess trade show. Let's make a trade today or check a AMA. You know Adam at the ATM. Mike always in the building. He gon' stay with him. They gon' start every show off with their own trade. Fantasies a big ocean. They made their own wave. Make sure you tapping in Tuesdays and Saturdays. Tuesday night, Saturday morning, ain't no better way. Hit that notification bell when the news break. Go subscribe right now, don't get the news late. Destination Devy, that's the team. Dynasty football, man, that's my favorite thing. I remember Biggie said it was all a dream. Now people watching on their phones and computer screens. Welcome to the team. Let's start the show.
What's good, everybody? Welcome back into the 40 Chess Dynasty Trade Show. As you can see, this looks a little different than what you're used to. This is going to be very different. We're live from New York City. We got Nick Ercolano from Big Dog's Gotta Eat. We're at the HQ. And this one's going to be special because we're actually not doing just trades that you're used to seeing from a bunch of different leagues. This one is an individual league breakdown that Nick and I are both in. We had multiple trades pop off in this league while I was here. So we figured, you know what, we might as well talk about the league as a whole, talk about the trades that went down, and, kind of give you our context of the league and then, what we think of the trades. So, Nick, appreciate you hopping on, man.
Yeah, dude, I'm excited for this. Fade the Fetal is, I've tried to kind of skim out a lot of the leagues that I'm in dynasty-wise, and I play in a lot of leagues that are roster management, and I know you play a lot of, like, best ball. Mm-hmm. So for me, I still prefer the roster managing. I like setting my lineup. I don't like waiver wire, but I like everything that kind of. I feel like the league engagement is very high when you're playing in an actual roster managed league.
Yeah.
But I try to narrow it down to a certain number of leagues, and Fade the Fetal is like actually one of the very few dynasty leagues that I'm in, and it's one that I enjoy very much because the settings are pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like tiered PPR.
Yeah. So the settings are it's tiered PPR. So you got half point per reception from the running back position. Then the wide receiver gets a full point PPR, and then the tight end gets 1.5 points per catch. So the settings definitely matter a lot. It's a start 10 league, 12 teams. So right now, the way the league is kind of worked, in my opinion, is
there point per carry? I feel like there's 0.2, maybe 0.2 point per carry.
I'm gonna try to pull it up because it might be.
I could do that while you're
okay, cool.
Running.
So what you're looking at right now is we had two teams that ended up leaving the league, unfortunately. Senate, who I loved, was in the league. He left, and then someone else left. So we had two.
Pay up. He didn't leave. I kicked his ass out.
Got rid of his ass.
Yeah. Don't disrespect me.
So we had two new people take over Orphans, and they looked at the roster and immediately kind of thought to gut it, right? And so you have those two teams that are very much towards the bottom now. You also have, as you'll see here today, a team that was wanting to rebuild that had been contending prior. So I think right now there's a pretty clear tier of teams that look really good, and then there's some bottom-dwelling teams.
Well, I think it's cool because, like, there are clear dominant teams who are playing like win now. My team's super young, expected to do well, especially per the tool that we'll get into, your tool today.
Yeah.
I still feel like I'm kind of in the tier underneath. Like I still think I need a few things to break right. So I think what we should do is like go through the trades and then at the end kind of like look at both of our teams individually and say like, okay, what kind of move can I make maybe based on my roster to like take my team over the edge and make me feel comfortable that I'm definitely going to get into that chip game.
I love that. So let's and real quick too, if you watching this, if you tune into AMAs on the 4th of July, I was thinking of what do I want the thumbnail to be and how do I tie the holiday in, and I was like, set off fireworks in your dynasty league. So I made that as the thumbnail and kind of actionable advice on if you like right now in July you get a lot of stale leagues, right? And it's just the dead period. There's not a lot going on. The news cycles are low. Teams aren't really thinking about playing to win and setting lineups in September. So I talked about kicking out trade offers and seeing if you can get one done and maybe, kicking up the activity of the league. So I was pulling up some deals I was looking at getting done, and I got one done. And Nick, I'm curious your opinion on this because I mean I got absolutely flamed in the chat. And here's the trade. So it was I'm receiving Deshaun Watson. David Bell's also a part of the deal. For me, had no context in the deal. This is one he actually offered back to me. I've been asking about Watson for quite a while. I'm sending away Tua Tagovailoa, Kenneth Walker, Trey McBride, and Chiggy. Nick, I'll let you kind of discuss it based on the scoring settings in the league and what you know about it. How you feel about this deal? How bad did I get gaped, man?
It's like one of those first glance. You're like, oh man, like this
is ugly.
This feels like a lot. It almost felt like you might have been able to use like just the left side of the trade and gotten that done. Like Tua and Kenneth Walker probably would have got that done for Deshaun Watson. Yep. I think the throwing the tight ends in, having this be a 1.5 PPR tight end with two younger guys who definitely have upside and, you know, nothing proven, of course, there. Probably could have taken a tight end out of that trade, too. I think you probably still could have got that done.
Yep.
So on paper, absolutely looks like an overpay, and the league chat for sure let you know about it.
Right.
I do think, though, this is one of those situations where, to me, it's very obvious, like, what you were going for.
Yeah.
You are like, man, I'm a delusional Cleveland fan. You were like, Deshaun Watson was an elite talent, right?
Yeah.
And was an elite fantasy option at the QB position. There is nothing harder to get. There is nothing more difficult to trade for or get in a dynasty superflex league than a top 5-6 quarterback. You got to sell your arms, your legs. You sold a couple of your nipples and your hair as well. It came out to a haul there, but Deshaun Watson is the dude that if he does become what he was, this trade makes sense for you. I understand like the direction you were going in. I think you probably paid a little bit too much there. I think you probably could have taken one, if not two pieces off this trade and like maybe swapped a late third for both tight ends and probably still got that done.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I was basically as soon as he took over as this is one of the orphan owners. So he takes over, and I was asking immediately about Watson. All the points you made really is a big reason why I bought. Like I'm very in on Watson. Not just because he's a Brown, but because I think he's one of the guys that has been a top 5 quarterback at the position. And in this league, given the scoring and that we're only starting 10 and 2 of which are super flex. If you can get 2 top 12 quarterbacks, like it makes up for all the gaps in between your roster.
Here's the way I'd relook at it too. To give you a little bit credit here, right? So I guess like just kind of off the top of your head, like if you had to rank the top 5 dynasty QBs right now, it's not a huge difference what the order is. Just like name them for me.
Yeah.
Right
So
now.
for me, it'd be Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, Burrow, and then I'd probably put Herbert, but you could argue Lamar.
Okay, so you had 6 right there.
Yep.
Trevor Lawrence wasn't even named yet.
Yeah, and Lawrence is definitely in the.
So Lawrence is there. Like, do you think you land Trevor Lawrence sending away that haul right there on the bottom?
I highly doubt it.
Right. You don't get that, and he's the QB7 in dynasty leagues.
Exactly.
So if Deshaun Watson gets back to top 7, top 6 QB, like think about what I just said. Obviously, T. Law is 3-4 years younger and might have higher upside overall in his career than Deshaun Watson, but that makes it make more sense when you look at it that way, where it's like, Deshaun Watson, a lot of risk here. Like you paid so many assets to get it. But then I agree with you. You don't get that deal done for Trevor Lawrence by sending those 4 pieces. You don't get that deal done for any of the top 7 QBs trying to send those 4 pieces.
1,000%. And when you see, that's a great point, and the way you illustrated that, because after you get past T-Law, there's a lot of like debate, right? Is it Fields? Which, by the way, we can talk about. I was trying to get Fields from you, and you weren't giving me it for. I added what it was, 8 Fields for Akers,
Tua, Akers, and Chiggy.
There you go. Yeah. So like the same type of.
That was close for me.
So had I made that Kenneth Walker, you probably pushed the deal through, maybe.
Yes.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah.
So, the point is, like after that, you got Fields, and the tier after that's kind of a little more convoluted with how it's viewed in market.
Would you have done that?
Maybe.
Now I'm sad.
I mean. You saw what I did here for Watson. Now, the difference for me in Fields and Watson is I love Fields, but I feel like his long-term is a little more uncertain.
Sure.
Watson, for him, though, is the next tier of guys where I could make a case where he could be right after Lawrence in market. And because that's the other biggest thing, market for me, Tua right now, because of the concussions and all that, I actually still like him. But if he gets hurt again, like this is a cratering asset, and I don't have another quarterback at this time before I make this trade. That's part of the reason I made all this. And I think there's one last point. If I'm going to pay up for something and overpay, and Dynasty is kind of what you talked about, it's going to be at the quarterback position for someone I think is in the elite tier.
Got you.
That's where my overpays are going to come pretty much all the time.
I think on paper it's really easy to be like, damn, you fucked up. But this is one of those trades where in a year we might look back and be like, smash.
Yeah.
Like you killed it here. Like Trey McBride and Chiggy could just, again, be kind of average this year. Kenneth Walker could be in that timeshare with Zach Charbonnet. Tua could get hurt, have that concussion, and before you know it, you're like, damn, you got a Trevor Lawrence type beat over there for, a few pieces that aren't hidden. That's the thing about Dynasty, man. It's just trades, when they first happen, it's so easy to react like emotionally, be like this.
Yeah.
How many times do trades look so dumb in the opposite way you thought about it a year later?
Oh, 1,000%.
Almost every time.
I mean, what's funny is Watson was mine at one point, and when he was going through the bad news cycles, there was a point where I'm like, this is bad, and he might actually sit out a full season minimum.
He might never play again. Yeah.
And so Senate offered me Najee for him straight up, and at the time, Najee was like an early second. I'm like, just in value and getting off of this asset, it just makes sense. Horrible trade. One of my worst trades I've probably ever made in Dynasty. So that happens.
Who do you have at tight end on this roster?
So that's a great question. So my tight end room, I just drafted a bunch of rookies in this class. So
this year?
Yeah. So
okay.
That was another thing. I had a bunch of disposable tight ends. Now I do think because they're down the line, it's not like I have a true horde going where I can command like market presence because I have a bunch of the high end ones. I have a bunch of the lower end ones. So my tight end room is, I drafted Michael Mayer and Sam Laporta this year.
Okay.
And I got Waller. So Waller's like my more contend now piece if he falls through.
So you have a solidified starter though.
Yes. And then I have the younger guys that, like, to me, McBride and Chig, I'd rather have like in my lineup this year than those rookies. But like value-wise, Laporta and Mayer are right in that same range. So that's why they were disposable to me at this point.
I actually think that like in tight end premium leagues, I love grabbing like 6-7 tight ends on my roster and just kind of seeing what plays out because you could use them in flex, dude.
Oh, 1,000%. Well, the other thing too is like if one of these guys pops off and becomes like Goddard range and really usable, and my other ones that I have in value don't like give me that lineup solidity, like I'm gonna feel like, damn, why did I do this?
I think about that a lot too because like I think when we had the startup draft, I took Damian Harris. And I was like psyched about it. I was like, yeah, he's young, he's good, whatever. But it's half PPR for running backs and 1.5 for tight ends. And I'm like, shitty tight ends are probably going to be worth more than Damian Harris in this league setting. And I think like more people don't really take advantage of that. And you really got to think beyond just like, am I getting a great starter at the tight end position? And more so like, what am I doing at my flex spot? When you got like double flexes, you got 2 flexes to throw in, there's a lot of times where a tight end in a 1.5 PPR tight end league is going to be a better option than like, the RB26 or the RB28 or something like that.
1,000%. And then the other thing too is when you get to some of these bye weeks and you get to attrition in the season, you can look at your roster and you thought, oh, my starters were great, but what happens? We all know, like, dude, who am I playing this week for like multiple weeks, right? So
it gets bad. Yeah, I was telling you in one of my other leagues, like I went into the year last year with fucking Albert O as my projected starter.
Oh, dude,
brutal.
Dude, you were preaching to the choir. I had Albert O as one of my main guys in a lot of best ball leagues, and he was a roster clogger. He's just getting me complete zeros. So that actually goes down here. When I was here in New York, I was here for 4 days. So the following day, shout out to Schumer. We're going to get to his trade.
Show me, baby.
So, Nick, I've kind of known when I make that deal, too.
Yeah.
We talk about 4D chess, like thinking moves ahead. I already kind of knew that I had Schumer's pick, and he'd been wanting to come get it back. So you may look at this trade and say, well, maybe you didn't need to do the Watson thing.
We'll talk about that real quick, about like the point you made yesterday about like someone coming to you and asking for their pick back.
Yeah, so like excuse me, one of the things I like to do is get at least like a couple first or 3 first or 4 first, and the more leverage you have on the class, you have, let's say, 25% of the class with 3 picks. And then when you have 4, you have 33%. Now, that's just leveraging you can use later. But when you do that, especially if you get futures out, what will happen is these teams that contend and they trade, they're mortgaging their future, things can go awry for those teams. And if those teams start coming back to you, hey, man, and the offer is either the DMs or the offer is they're looking for their first back, that is literally the biggest signal of
it's pouncing time.
They want their pick back because they want to take it to the bottom.
Yeah, they're not asking for their pick back because they think they're going to win the championship.
Exactly.
Wouldn't make sense.
Like most people aren't like, yeah, I just want this in case something goes wrong. I'm just going to keep it at the middle.
A lot of people try to hide their motives
Exactly.
in dynasty trades, but it can't work both ways. So if someone wants their pick back, right, they're tanking, which means you target their veterans.
Exactly. And so the greatest thing there is, and why it's difficult to navigate though, is if Schumer's doing this and I'm basically explaining to him and showing him via the trades I'm making and offering, like I'm holding your feet to the fire. You're going to pay like this is an early first. Mm-hmm. The problem is, in reality, too, if he doesn't get a deal done and he forces this older team to try to contend, I'm not going to reap the rewards of a top 3 pick. Yeah. He could make it a 6, 7, 8 team, right? So
you also, I think you have leverage in that position. As soon as someone's like, I'm rebuilding, it's like they cannot go into the season with those veteran assets.
No, if you want to rebuild without your pick, it's like the worst thing in Dynasty. Mm-hmm. If you don't have your pick and you try to rebuild. So I have his 24 first I'm sitting on, and then after I made that trade, I'm like, all right, now that I got Watson secured, I'm ready to go to Schumer. I feel better about my actual solidified quarterback room. Now I feel like I can actually send this first away. One of my problems without making that trade, though, I didn't want to just give that pick up if I was still wanting to rebuild. So I ended up making the trade in here now, Nick. So it's Dak Prescott, DeAndre Hopkins, who currently doesn't have a team, and DJ Moore. I give him back his 24 first, which he's going to start tearing down his team. T-Rock's 24 second, my 25 second, and Tyjae Spears. So, Nick, I went from having, Tua Tagovailoa and Danny Dimes as my quarterbacks with no quarterback 3 to now I have Deshaun Watson, Dak Prescott, and Danny Dimes as my QB3.
Wild.
I feel a lot better about my quarterback room, significantly better.
This trade to me has the same energy as the other trade, except on the flip side, where I think the first thing I said to you was like, man, I feel like what you just gave up is basically like Dak's value in itself.
Yes.
And you were able to, maybe like something else added on. So if he goes full rebuild and he does it successfully, and that first ends up being like the 102, the 103, then yeah, that maybe pushes it over Dak. But like realistically, if that ends up being the 1.5, 1.6, just like 2 seconds and Tyjae Spears, that's Dak's value in dynasty trades right now. So the fact that you got Hopkins and DJ Moore in a full PPR league where are we starting 3 wide receivers?
Yeah, 3 receivers, yep.
3 wide receivers, like, I mean, you fucking murked that trade.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
So, and that was where, as much as it felt like an overpay on the first one, like a lot for me too now, Nick, especially in lineup leagues, like you started talking about it, which I found was interesting because we hadn't discussed this at all. In lineup leagues, best ball leagues too, but in lineup leagues, roster construction and the way I have set up my assets is really big because I want to have in my lineup, I want to get closer to the elite quarterbacks. And I think if you can plug 2 of those in, you have a significant advantage at the quarterback position. And given it super flex, like in only 10 starters, that's where I want to be big at. And then I needed wide receiver depth. So I got DJ Moore and Nuke Hopkins. We'll see where Nuke lands. I still feel like he last year looked really good. I didn't expect him to have that juice.
It's almost like the D-Hop piece is – It's not the piece that I'm like infatuated with, but it's like it's an incredible. It's a way above average throw-in on a trade.
Exactly,
It's not a throw-in. He's better than that, but like,
and he becomes my wide receiver 4 in this league, which is huge. I needed some depth at receiver. So, anyway, I mean, the deal I think really though, for me now, I feel like I have the roster that I want to compete. I have the quarterbacks that I feel good about. I don't have a truly elite one, but I have 2 good ones in Watson and Dak, and I have Dimes as insurance. I also have leverage at quarterback. If I decided now, like if one of these teams that has elite quarterbacks that won't trade now, later in the year, isn't going well, I might be able to get to the table. Whereas before, like most times Tua, because of the injuries, Danny Dimes isn't sexy. They don't really get you to the table of an elite quarterback. Yeah. Everyone wants like a quarterback back that's tiered down in the top 12, 15.
Dude, Dimes as your 3 is incredible. And what you could do too is like there's a lot of young quarterbacks obviously coming up into the league. If you feel strongly about one of them, or if one of them is doing like okay and people are kind of unsure about him, like Dimes is a perfect flip piece for you where you could move Dimes for maybe like Howell in a first or Pickett in a first or something along those lines. You know what I mean? And since he's your 3, you don't necessarily need him to be in your lineup, but now you just added an extra piece, an extra first for the future.
That is that's another great point that I was thinking about doing if the trade presents itself, where you can essentially keep your quarterback 3 security, but then net additional pieces to try to build up the rest of your roster too.
100%.
So great points.
But you can't do that though if he's your QB2.
Exactly.
'Cause then you're like forcing Pickett or Howell or whoever into your lineup.
And only having 2 quarterbacks in that league is just not something I feel good about either. Yeah. So anyway, the thing we were talking about, like the league had started kicking off. The chats were popping off. People at that point seeing the deal I made where I lost and this one where I won. It was like there's chat going on. Me, you, and Toney are all in this league. We're talking about it in person. Mm-hmm. The chat's popping off, and there's a lot of deal offers being made. Only one more happened from it. This is the last one we're going to talk about. This one, to me, might be the most wild of all of them, but I'm curious your thoughts. Like, both of these two teams here, the interesting part to me, Nick, were these are two orphan owners that came in, and they're both rebuilding, essentially.
What's that Bosco first? Bosco was in the championship last year, no?
Sure was. And I'll pull
Bosco left the league, though, and he's
still in the league. So Bosco's first is a part of the deal. So it's Marquise Brown, for those on podcast. Marquise Brown, Kyler Murray, Trey McBride being acquired for Juwan Johnson, Javonte Williams, and a 24 first of Bosco's. So I'll pull up the simulator, but we ran it yesterday. Bosco's first in our league simulator is the best team based on wins. Like, he projects to be a very good team. So we'll say the
110.
Yeah.
We'll just say the 110.
There you go. Late first, let's call it.
Okay.
A late first Javonte Williams and Juwan Johnson, man.
Yeah. So another trade where if that's the 110, Kyler probably wins that by himself, that trade.
Oh, 1,000%.
So that's another piece where, like, guys, if you are making moves in a super flex dynasty league, the QB has so much trade power that you usually don't need to add in all these additional pieces for it. So to get it, a really fucking weird, funny trade that, like, Arizona is that entire side, which is all three of these pieces might be on different teams come next year. Kind of interesting, right?
Yeah.
Like, Kyler might not be the Arizona quarterback. McBride
right.
will probably be in Arizona. Marquise Brown, I could see him being out of Arizona next year too.
Totally.
Which is kind of interesting and probably good, because is there an offense in the NFL that has, like, lower value skill players? Probably not.
Nope. And I think that's probably how you get that done. Is, like, to your point, this is throwing in Hollywood and McBride is a very cheap stack option.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem I might have with this trade is, like, Javonte Williams is a guy that you could buy at low value right now, but he did not do that.
No, well, that's the thing. So when I look at breaking down this trade, especially in a league like this, Javonte was one of these guys that I was very in on, but when he's coming off that pretty gruesome knee injury, very similar to J.K. Dobbins, and we saw how that is, I'm not saying he's going to for sure have, mid-season having to have another surgery again and miss a bunch of time, but they tend to start slow and not have a great year, year after an ACL surgery. It's a running back, so the shelf life is low. And then Juwan Johnson, I mean, Mike and I, if you watch the show enough, we love him at discount. But to your point,
Juwan and Trey basically cancel each other out in this trade.
1,000%. But the point you made about Kyler is so big to me. Kyler Murray, if you're going to make a deal in a super flex league where it's a lineup league where you're starting 10, most people won't even make a trade without getting a quarterback back. Now, the caveat to me would be if you're getting a first back and you're going to use it on a QB, so let's say this is guaranteed top 5-6 pick. That could maybe be the exception where he doesn't get a quarterback back, but he thinks he's going to just leverage himself into one of the rookies. Yeah. This pick doesn't even get you that. 110, most quarterbacks that are worth a shit are gone.
No, those are the risky QBs.
Like this year, you might not even be able to get Will Levis in your league.
Like, okay, yeah. So basically, imagine, right, and the draft class next year is going to be different. Imagine you swap that first round pick, and that player name right there is Will Levis. Like, you're like, that's disgusting.
It's awful.
You know what I mean?
You feel horrible about
First looks cool because it says first, and, anything could happen. Firsts are magical, but be practical about it. Like, understand what team you're trading with, understand what pick you're getting there, and then start to put a player name to the face there, and it becomes a lot more manageable in your head to understand what you're getting, what you're giving.
Exactly. And I think even if you thought this value was correct, which in my mind, the value's off for the record, but if you thought it was correct, not getting a quarterback back, taking on a running back of Javonte's stature in a rebuild, and getting a late first, the trade didn't make a lot of sense. I will say this, though. The one thing I can defend on Emperor's side is that I know in a rebuild he's just looking to accumulate as many firsts as possible and leverage them later. But when you give up Kyler at this cost, the problem for me is eventually when you go to get out of the rebuild, you're going to have to use first and all your stuff to go rebuild your quarterback room. And getting rid of Kyler at this price makes that antithetical down the road.
Yeah. What I assume probably happened is if we asked him, I bet he has a very strong take on Kyler Murray. I think that's probably what this comes down to.
Oh, you know what? That's a great point, man. Go ahead. Sorry.
Did he said that? Because I know a lot of people in Dynasty who are like, we're just getting rid of him. They're like, I don't like the injury. I don't like his, like, work ethic bullshit. I don't like his relationship with the Cardinals. I know a lot of people that are just kind of like out on Kyler. And that could be the case here. It doesn't mean makes him win the trade, but would make me kind of understand the psychology of where he's coming from.
It's funny you say that because it brought up a really good point that I missed on personally that I wanted to talk about for people watching the show that maybe don't have a deal happening that you can really pick up signals on. And that's a great point you made. I'm glad you said it because here's what happened. Before I made this trade for Dak, the second one, I missed this comment, but he said in here, I guess I think I'm going to have to die with Kyler Murray since nobody wants him. And
clues.
When I saw my trade went through, right? And after I'm looking at it, that was on the top of the trade. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. By the time I asked him about Kyler, he'd already been so far along in dialogue with this person that the deal goes through before I really even got to the table. So if you see stuff like that, like if someone puts in league chat or they're sending you constantly offers of the same person, obviously there's a signal that they are fearful of this person and they want off. That might be a very good buy low opportunity. Great point you made, man.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it because he's like, especially with these polarizing players, right? Like there's a lot of guys who just kind of sit in the middle and are like, whatever, the Christian Kirks, he's just on the team. He's just going to give me fucking 14, 13, 12 points a game for the next 4 years or whatever. Guys like Kyler are the ones that you could really, really take advantage of. When there's polarizing values out there in Dynasty, usually an owner has some sort of very strong take on him.
Yeah. And Kyler right now, because he's, small in stature, the team, basically they drafted him with, Kingsbury and all that's gone now, right? So he's small in stature. He's coming off of an ACL injury. He's a lot of his values baked into rushing. There is a ton of panic on him right now. So
100%.
This is the most panic I've ever seen. But
QB 3, 4, I feel like going into the year last year in Dynasty, and now he might be like the 8, 9, 10.
Yes, and that's where, I've seen in some of these startups, like patrons have sent me, there's 4th, 5th round in startups, which is wild to me.
Yes.
So the other thing I'll say to this about Watson, like I'm kind of curious, and I try to look at range of outcomes, and I don't really see this one as one that happens often, but if Watson plays really bad like he did the last 6 games for all next year, I wonder how bad his panic and his value goes to.
Oh, it's gonna tank tremendously.
And that's where the risk that I made to consolidate all that into Watson on the bad end would be looking like, oh man, what have I done?
I feel like him struggling for an entire year would be shocking.
I 1,000% agree. I don't see it actually happening, but if I look at the range of outcomes, if he played closer to that 6-game stretch than he did like his Houston form, people are going to be panicked on him, especially because the off the field issues seem to somehow still be. People don't want to attach themselves from
a very common sense standpoint, though. Bro, with all that on your mind, with probably having to be in court and talking with your lawyer 24/7, just not taking sides or anything, but just saying what he's going through as a person, there's no way it doesn't just affect you on the field all the time. It's got to take, you're a quarterback. You need to be the most mentally checked in player on a football field, right? You need to know everybody else's position, everybody else's job. You need to be watching tape at an insane rate. You need to understand everything at a level that other players don't. And if your brain is not 100% on the team and the football game at hand, you're gonna struggle a little bit. I guarantee you Watson was feeling that way, and we're all people. We've been through shit in life where you get through those stages and you feel a lot better and you're able to capitalize and be more energetic and more focused, and that's the biggest takeaway for me.
Honestly, from what you said too, I've thought about this a lot. Where last year, especially when he was going through it, and I'm watching the Browns with Brissett out there and wanting Watson back. Watson, it's similar to Woods in a way where Watson was this great off the field character, thought very highly of. Everybody was always praising him. So that's basically what he's known all his whole life and tenure playing quarterback. And then he's going to come into the middle of the season, towards the end of the year, that he has to play perfect to get this team to the playoffs. And there's a lot of now everyone looks at him and he's been dealing with all this negative off the field energy. And I think that definitely for a quarterback can mess with your head.
Takes a toll.
Totally different situation he's ever been in before.
Yeah, just from a very pure human standpoint, that shit. I've gone through shit where I'm God damn, at my work, at my job, and it affects if I'm going through something where as a business something happens to us, right? And I'm I still got to make 3-4 videos a week. Those don't come out well.
Yeah.
Because I'm struggling with something internally. So I'd imagine a lot of that shifted over to him too. And you could say, oh, he's a professional, but the overall mass of what happened to him, it was the headline of the sports world for a very long period of time, and deservedly so, obviously. But regardless, if he's your fantasy quarterback, this is real.
And you know what else too? Imagine if you had to do that, but then you're gonna go play in front of all the people that are like your biggest critics. His first game is in Houston. Remember that?
Yeah. That was wild. That was so sus by the NFL,
you know,
bro.
Like how crazy was that?
Yeah, and like with those situations you go through, like Time does for the most part heal all things. He'll be dealing with that for the rest of his life. His mental's fucked probably for a long time, but Time does heal. He will get more. He'll have like a support system within the Cleveland franchise, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm sure he'll be more comfortable in that locker room around those players and build friendships with them and stuff, and feel more comfortable. So that to me, like everyone could cite stats and analytics and stuff for Watson. It's a very clear, like, human part of what's going on there for me.
1,000%. And sometimes, as great as all the data points we have, there's other things that go on than just you know.
Sorry, Toney looks just hungover as shit right now.
Toney, oh man,
He looks like he's hurting. Yeah.
He's editing, kind of. He's just looking in the screen.
That's our champion. That's our league champion right there.
I thought we weren't going to say that. Damn it.
He looks like he needs a little pick me up.
Toney did win this league last year.
That's enough of that.
And Nick is clearly ahead of him in the league simulator, so that's going to be the last time.
8 points over the span of 14 games.
Anyway, with this deal, in totality, to finish this specific deal, I understand selling low on players or selling on a point with players that you're panicked on or are fearful of. To me, though, like Kyler Murray, even at his worst, is still solidified because he got that paid contract, a top 15 quarterback-ish range player that's young enough where I'm just not moving for this type of
like
price.
Even if it's not in Arizona, he's getting another starting job elsewhere. And like we know when he's on the field, maybe you don't like him as a real life quarterback, but he's shown plenty of stretches where he's averaging fucking 25 points per game as a fantasy QB. He's also got a cannon. He is a good quarterback.
That's such a great point about like rushing quarterbacks in general. Talk about, we can use Fields as an example because you have him. Like there's some people that are panicked on Fields' current price because, well, he was awesome last year because he ran, but he didn't throw that well, and if he doesn't throw well soon, his long-term longevity and security in the league may be questioned. With Kyler Murray, though, the difference there for me anyway is that Kyler is already paid. Like even if he can't throw the ball that well, which I think he's an above-average passer, but even if he's not the greatest passer, that bag secures him 4 years of what you're talking about, which in fantasy, he doesn't have to be a great thrower or even win football games. He can run really well, and we've seen him be very, very good on the ground.
Yeah. I think the Kyler hate on terms of his like arm and stuff has gone way too far. I remember like straight up watching him back in high school. I saw him play in high school, and I was like, damn. And then he won like Gatorade Player of the Year in high school. He was like the best football player in the nation. Goes to college, and I remember watching his first start, and I tweeted this out, like I have it on record. I was like, go grab Kyler Murray, Heisman. It was like 45-1 or something like that. Each week it went down 45 to 35, down to 30, down to 20, down to 12. He nailed it that year, and I had like so many tweets being like, yo, thank you for telling me to nail Kyler. I was like, he's such an electric athlete. He's so explosive. We forget how explosive he is as a runner. We forget how he's got a cannon of an arm. I'm telling you, like, yeah, the Kyler hate has gone too far.
It's definitely too far. Now, especially when it's a trade like this. I mean, I've seen trades that aren't quite this low, but one thing I wanted to do too, Nick, before we get out of here, those were the 3 trades that went down. The fireworks kind of happened. I was hoping there would be more deals done, but some of these teams I think are so split. And like after Schumer made that trade, there wasn't a lot of players that he has on his team where people are willing currently to pay a first for. Yeah. And there wasn't a lot of deals I think imminent, even though
he's in that middle range where it's like Geno Smith. A QB needy team, I could see if you're a back end first, maybe you go for it. If you feel like it's still even like unsure there. Is he really the QB of the future? You got Kamara, who no one's paying a first for right now.
No.
Christian Kirk, Russell Wilson. You know, you have some veterans that are like borderline that are not good enough to actually like move the needle on your team. So I feel like if you're paying a first for a player, they need to be a needle mover or like a top half player of your starting lineup, something like that, where I don't think any of these guys really get there. So he's probably going to have to give up a lot of these guys at value. So when you start seeing trades like this, understand it's like blood in the water. You got to become a shark quick.
Yes, and that's the thing. Like, you know, part of when I gave Schumer that deal, the reason I wanted DJ Moore in it as well is like that was DJ Moore and Nuke is cheap enough right now that I think he could be a positional difference maker for another season if he goes to the right situation and plays healthy. The thing is, I wanted to get DJ Moore off his team and Nuke because outside of that, like those are the pieces I think I could extract from the deal that were still like taking value away from his team that made it make sense for me. Yeah. And it didn't leave him with a lot of room for that. But I'm curious I want to talk about both of our teams and then maybe some just like structures of what we think we're going to be moving into with our teams, or deals you're looking to make. Not necessarily a specific player, but like structure-wise, what you're looking to do with your team.
Yeah. So again, I have a very young team. Like you look at my starting lineup: Fields, ETN, London, Pickens, Pitts, Ramondre. And it's kind of like I need a couple of these guys. Like they all have a ton of upside.
Yeah.
Right. But I definitely need like 3 or 4. I need Pitts to hit that soon. Or London to hit that soon. I need ETN to be better than what the fantasy community is kind of like reeling about him right now. I need Ramondre to hit. Like I have a lot of guys who love the upside of him, but I realistically need 3 or 4 of them to like really hit this year. You know? And that kind of makes me nervous. My QB position is not great either, but I do think the good part about a Superflex league, an upside guy like Fields gives me a lot of leverage that if he plays to where Fields played last year, I don't need my QB2 to be like a top 10 QB.
Man,
so
that's such a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, like I do like having strong QBs obviously in a Superflex, but I've also won championships with mid-tier guys like the QB12 and the QB17, right? As long as the rest of your roster is like kind of nice there. So my QB situation is a little bit fucked. I did fortunately get to draft Bryce Young this year. So he's in my lineup and probably better in the future. But the rest of my QBs, like I have Fields, Bryce Young, and then I have some mixed mosh of fucking, for my QB3, Sam Howell, Baker Mayfield. It gets kind of ugly there. So I might need to make a move for a quarterback. But the problem is, it's hard to trade for quarterbacks. Like I probably should have went and fucking targeted Kyler.
Yeah. I think we both, in hindsight's always 2020.
Too busy fucking filming TikToks to know what's going on over here, dude.
Hindsight's 2020. If we know that this deal was capable, you and I would have been in this guy's DMs and offers.
Most common group chat quote is, "Why the fuck didn't you offer me that?"
I know.
Like, I would have given you more.
And you know what? I honestly hate Monday morning quarterbacking deals when you weren't out there trying to get a deal done. It's like, dude, don't act like you were making all these offers and that he chose someone else over you. It doesn't happen.
That's very, very true. Yeah.
And then what I was going to say about that Fields point. So on our WoRP tool, wins over replacement players, one of the things that I think you hit on, which is so key, when I look at this line and the graph of it, so it's very steep in like the top 5. Now, year to year, this is going to change. And this isn't predictive of players, right? You got to ultimately hit the player to have the WoRP. Last year's quarterback 3 isn't going to necessarily be this year's, and 10 and all that. But when I look at the WoRP tool, one thing I definitely think that you hit on, which is very true, top 12 quarterbacks are significantly more valuable in wins over replacement than basically everyone. Other than there's some running backs on the high end assets that will hit. But like Justin Jefferson last year in WoRP was 2.27. That's the highest. Justin Fields, to your point, was 1.71, right? So, I mean, he's almost as valuable to your team as Justin Jefferson was. Not quite, but there's few skill players that rival what Justin Fields means to your team, how he played last year. So the point is, if you have, like, he was 7 last year. Now, if you look at the top 4,
those guys are crazy.
Those are absolute haymakers. But my point is, if you have a top 12 guy, and especially like a top 5-ish guy, that can carry deficiencies on your roster.
And I think the expectation is for Fields to be up there, because I think like this takes into account those first 4 games he had where he averaged like 10 points a game. They didn't let him run the ball at all. If you look at it, if this chart was literally just, you can filter by weeks.
Yeah. So we'll run 5 to 17 to see how great it was.
See where Fields is at there. There you go.
He's at 5.
Higher than Jefferson.
He's actually higher than all the skill players other than probably, Jacobs. So, yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, too. Those first 4 weeks were brutal, man. It's amazing. Speaking of the Kyler Murray panic, I remember seeing deals like that for Fields where people were so panicked on Fields. The fickle beast of dynasty managers, Kyler Murray, when he threw that pass into Nuke Hopkins in the end zone to win the game, was untouchable. And now it's like, look, I want to get rid of him in a couple of years. So
it's Kyler's, Deshaun, it's all these dudes, man. It takes one little break I think we're like programmed. That's what you got to shift your mind. Quarterbacks are not the same as other position players. Like it's easy for us to get up and down on running backs. Like Javonte's value swings tremendously, and it should, because running back positions they have such a short shelf life, and momentum matters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
totally.
You're in your prime, you miss 1 full year. Like there's a really good chance that just shot you down your career numbers like 50%. You know what I mean? Like you need the momentum of being the workhorse into multiple years in order for you to like capture your prime. Whereas quarterback, if you're good, if you're talented, you're going to last for a while because you don't need to be fucking running a 4-3-2 in order to be your best.
1,000%. Like Javonte right now, the way he's trending reminds me so much of, the great rookie class of 2020. We look at, guys we were super, super hyped about, like Cam Akers, DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins. Look how they all have trended in Dynasty coming off of different type of injuries.
It's like all of them, like J.K. Dobbins missed the year, and now like the momentum of what he was is just like kind of zapped.
Exactly. And don't get me wrong, he's going to be usable in fantasy, but his Dynasty value has never going to recover at the running back position. So I honestly think your team's really good. You have all your picks still. You have plenty of different moves to make.
Yeah. What if you're looking at my roster right now, what's something that you would think about doing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely think for me personally, it's going to be tough to do because the high-end quarterbacks are all on contenders. Mm-hmm. If I was able to leverage a Bryce, as much as I love his upside long-term, and something else into a more solidified elite quarterback, that'd probably be something I would be willing to do because I think
like Deshaun Watson.
Like, yeah, if you were able to get Watson or Murray before they got bought up,
I'll trade him to you.
So that would have been something I would do. And then I think at this point though, if I can't make a move like that, I'm personally waiting and seeing on some of these guys. Yeah. And then as your team, you'll be able to assess so much better in middle of October-ish what you need and what's hit versus right now doing it in June. And now you can leverage your first into the equation and probably go buy an asset that you actually need, whether that's a receiver, a tight end, a running back.
Because having such a young team, like, so I got dudes like, Khalil Herbert, James Cook, Rashad Bateman, Kadarius Toney, where all their floors are incredibly low, but exactly. Maybe they'll be good. Like who fucking knows? About
one of those dudes pops off, and now all of a sudden you have a different flex conversation completely than you have right now. Yep. So I mean, I think I would explore wide receiver tier ups if it was there, and quarterback tier ups. I just know this is one thing you got to know about your league, everyone listening, is sometimes it's easy for us to talk in a generic vacuum about a trade or what you should do. But I know in this league, those two things are going to be hard to do, like the way this league's picked over. So personally, if you couldn't make a very clear wide receiver tier up to like a Tyreek Hill type or something like that, I'd probably wait and try to leverage your first into the equation in like the fall.
So I got London and Kyle Pitts. I wonder, I guess 2 questions.
Yeah.
Like,
it's funny you say that. I'm wearing the Pitts jersey. Yeah. Nick's a big ATL fan. And second, I noticed that, and I'm curious what you got.
I'm thinking 2 things. Like, one, I could either buy into one side or the other of the conversation and say, hey, this is like passing offense. It's going to be hard for both of those guys to eat. Uh-huh. I can move off one of them. Both of them, like, even so that conversation happens. People are like, oh, they only throw the ball fucking 22 times a game. There's no way they could both eat. But their values are still sky high as individual talents in Dynasty. So I can move 1,000%. Either of those off for
hauls.
For hauls. Or on the flip side, I could say, what if like the minority happens where Desmond Ridder is actually pretty good and makes his offense usable, and that's someone I could probably get for pretty cheap. So like maybe do I buy into the Atlanta offense right now, London, Pitts, and see if I can get Desmond Ridder for I don't know. Maybe I can just go Howell for Ridder or like make a swap based on my team.
You actually could definitely that would not be something I hate at all. Ridder for Howell, just because it gives you the upside of if Atlanta hits and Ridder hits, you're more rewarded than if Howell becomes good, right?
Yeah.
Now
the Atlanta situation is tough to figure out for Dynasty.
It totally is. Ridder at a cheap cost, I'm perfectly fine. And I think the interesting part about those guys is if you end up deciding you want to win, unless Ridder does become legit, I don't know that those guys this season, like they may be solid. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying London. I want London shares. I have plenty of him and Pitts, but I don't know that those 2 guys being staples in your lineups this season is a true piece of a contending team that wins in a lineup start time.
That's what makes me nervous because London, Pickens, Pitts are all guys in my lineup right now that I feel like I'm kind of depending on, and I'm like, I don't know if a championship team will have those guys.
And what's funny is the cycles of dynasty values, like right now, all the old guys are unsexy. And if you look like Keep Trade Cut, for example, they're pushed way down the board. Everyone right now is like all youth. And then by October, let's say Pickens isn't really mattering in points per game or London, those type guys, you'll see the value swing totally different in the fall where they go way down.
I'm like thinking about right now moving a guy like Pickens.
Pickens, I think, is, I'll be honest, it's not that I don't like him. If you can move Pickens, even if you have to add something to get into a higher tier veteran, I was going to say like
Pickens for Cooper.
Oh, I mean, that would be a smash for me.
Yeah. Like
total smash.
I don't know if that works. Maybe I could add something into that, but like I don't think that's unrealistic depending on where. I don't know what team Cooper's on right now, depending on where they are. And they're like, actually, I think Toney has Cooper. Yo, Toney, what do you feel about you got Amari Cooper and Fade the Fetal? You want to give him to me for a young wide receiver?
All right. All right. So, Toney, what would a trade – I'll try to mediate this. What would a trade with Nick look like? Like, what would it take to get Amari Cooper for Nick? Like, what does that look like for your team? If you had to pull up – I can give you his team if you need to see it. Like, what would it look like? What do you want back for Amari Cooper?
See, I think my real weakness on my team is I don't really have a second quarterback. I have Joe Burrow, and then my QB2 is Kenny Pickett, who I'm hoping – That's
your QB2.
That's my QB2 is Kenny Pickett. QB3 is Jimmy G.
Found the weakness. Remember when he said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it?
I mean, it doesn't feel broke.
All right. Well, first of all, so you would take Deontay Johnson over George Pickens straight up in Dynasty?
Yeah. I think I would.
Okay.
So that feels problematic because I wouldn't right there.
Well,
so we're at way
Well, that's
different
where I'm
values.
saying, what does it look like for him? Because, like, this is something – a lot of times what I find when I'm trading is I'm trying to make a deal happen in a certain structure, but the person's not valuing back at all. Like Pickens, you're trying to move Pickens. He doesn't value Pickens appropriately. It's a moot point for the deal. So that's why I'm asking, what do you think? Because maybe there's a deal that makes more sense that you're talking about. So, like, you want more quarterback insurance or someone that might be better than Pickett possibly.
Right. Like, if you would do –
I have Fields and Bryce Young, and then on my bench I have –
how do you feel about like adding like a
Howell and Baker Mayfield
Howell and Baker
as like my QB3s?
What about a Howell type? Not necessarily one for Cooper, but like does Howell plus something get him to the conversation of getting a wide receiver like Cooper?
The other it was Howell and Baker. I almost like Baker more than Howell, honestly.
Okay, well, what about like Baker then? There you go. This is why you do it. This is why you ask him what he wants.
I don't believe in either of those guys. Ideally, the trade.
You need
somebody,
a QB3 though.
You probably do want insurance at the quarterback.
I would feel fine with Jimmy G as my QB3 if my QB2 was more promised than Kenny Pickett, though.
Okay. So really, so then I didn't realize you had Jimmy G too. So you don't actually, you're looking more so to buy like a higher end quarterback than Pickett, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's honestly a problem in Dynasty Superflex. It goes back to the points of those trades we just talked about, right? Like, I made that move for Watson. Kyler got bought here at kind of a ridiculous discount.
I should have bought Kyler back.
We all said that now.
All right. Do you like let's see. So here are the guys that I would totally be willing to kind of like move off of, that I would put on the trade block, and you tell me if you have interest in them. It's Debo, Pickens, Rashad White, either of those quarterbacks I named, Khalil Herbert, James Cook, Rashad Bateman, Kadarius Toney, either of the rookie tight ends in Green Bay, Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft. I've Hendon Hooker too. Those guys I could definitely part ways with.
What about Bateman?
There we go.
I mean,
what about him?
Yeah.
I think I like him as like a young prospect that has good potential. I wouldn't trade Amari Cooper straight up for him now because I feel like
what do you want to attach to Bateman to get to Cooper?
Run through the list one, or let me see.
I got you. Yeah, here. Just take my phone.
All right. Real quickly, I don't think I would do this, but in Dynasty, do you like Debo more than Amari?
Yeah, I think I do. It's not far off, but I don't know if I want to do a lateral move there.
Yeah.
I'd rather give you like pieces that you feel like you're building your team on, just so I can get one solidified piece in Cooper. Like if you like Bateman and another player together.
Would you split Amari Cooper, Bateman, and Toney?
Wait, what?
Bateman and Toney for Amari Cooper?
Yeah.
Bateman and Toney for Amari Cooper. Okay.
I don't know if I said that right originally, but I meant split Cooper for Bateman and Toney.
I think that deal makes a lot of sense.
I think it does too. Okay. I think I would do that.
Where's my team real quick? Okay. I kind of like that. Gives me a little more depth. Gives me a little more youth. I will say, though, I do feel like depth is something I already have, so getting more depth may not be the move, but I do really like the price of Bateman.
Let me see.
What's your depth relative to
so here,
so
your depth right now.
So my starters don't feel super high end right now. I would say Cooper, Michael Pittman, and I don't think Jerry Jeudy's my 3. To be honest, I think maybe Ayuk's my 3.
Okay,
but then I have Deontay Johnson, Jerry Jeudy.
But here, I would say this though, like realistically, I get your point. I would say like right now after this trade, you would have Pittman, Jeudy. If you made it, you would have Pittman, Jeudy, Ayuk, Deontay, and then realistically though,
also, I mean,
like you want that upside
too.
Because you outside of that, your depth. You got to remember when there's bye weeks and there's injuries, like somebody's going to get hurt. It's just the way it works. True. Like you don't want to be reliant on Romeo Doubs or DPJ in a league like this, very likely.
Right, but we're also talking like just wide receivers.
No, I get you. Yeah, no, but like, okay, what's your depth at the other positions that you? I mean, like when I look at your bench currently, obviously Ayuk really should be a starter. But like, there's no one I'm sitting here like, yeah, that makes a ton of sense to start weekly. Now they could be, but like today, none of those guys project there. Where like Bateman and Toney, definitely there's a scenario where they are worth a flex.
They're also both like under
start.
25.
Yes,
too.
And both if either one of them like has a great start, we know how Dynasty works. Those are like names that people are excited about, and that they get value bumps because of their just inherent Dynasty value.
Definitely.
So I mean, I'm not. I think that deal would make sense if you do it. Let's get it done on the trade show. First deal happening live on the Dynasty Trade Show, man.
My telefono.
Yeah, he's got to get his telephone to make it happen. You see that? Made a deal happen live.
Here we go. You know what? We just thought of a new service, a new product for you.
I love that.
Let him consult a trade for your
mediate the trades, man. I love this. We got a live trade.
Would you actually? You know what?
Were you going to talk about a pick instead of a receiver?
No, I wasn't. I was just going to go through your receivers and see like value wise who you would swap Cooper for, like who you would be okay being like, you could take him instead of Cooper.
To be honest,
is there anyone that you wouldn't?
Well,
I feel like they're the same value.
Yeah, I kind of think Cooper.
I think that's the right one for his team.
I think so too. I think he's my most valuable receiver. Actually, is that weird to say? Even though he's like significantly older,
I think I would value Ayuk over Cooper.
Really,
I definitely would value Ayuk over Cooper.
Would you give Ayuk in that trade?
I
think that's the way you answer that question.
Right,
what you value the most.
Yeah, exactly.
I think his initial reaction makes me know that the answer is no.
A lot of times, though, I'm a very short-sighted dynasty player, though. You know what I mean? Like, I value next year, I think, way more than a normal dynasty player does. You know what I mean? So
maybe you would rather do Ayuk then, because Ayuk, like, here's the situation for Ayuk. I don't know how.
Actually, I wouldn't do Ayuk here because I already have Debo in my starting lineup.
Oh, good point.
But I would like to trade with Ayuk too. But I'm going to send it through as Bateman and Toney for Cooper.
I think that trade actually makes sense.
I think it's even. I think it works.
You're just trying to get a deal done today.
Yeah, I mean we're live on it. We got to get something done.
We got it. All right. I see it. I'm a counter, throw in an extra second, and you got yourself a deal.
All right, like this is how trades just go to shit.
All right, I like it. Bang! It just happened.
There
Beautiful. Let's go. There we go.
A fourth trade. So now we got a fourth trade to review until Noah gets here.
What did Noah do?
Well, you guys are going
waiting for him.
I see what you're saying.
No, Noah didn't do anything wrong.
Right. I thought he made a bad trade or something. So where would you put in redraft? Where would you put Amari Cooper? Like wide receiver, what?
So we just drafted him in Underdog yesterday, didn't we?
Maybe, I don't remember. He's like somewhere in probably like the 10 to 14 range, I think, for me.
Okay. I was going to say 12, 15.
Yeah, I was going to say bullishly I could put him inside the top 10 because Watson's there, but I think I'd say 15-ish is
He was
rough.
the 9 last year,
yeah.
and I think like projecting that is definitely like a little bit too optimistic, but I think a little bit off that is probably realistic.
The other thing you have to bake in with Cooper, like I love Cooper. I think he's with Watson for a full season could be awesome. You have to bake in Dynasty especially why I think a deal like that makes sense is Cooper, if he smashes again, is going to be you'll like him for that season. But if he gets hurt, like we've seen it, it's been a while since it, but he dealt with a lot of injuries in Oakland and that. If he gets hurt, you're talking about like,
he's someone whose value could, like this time next year, his value could be worth like a back second round pick or something like that.
I'm going to give you last year a really good example of this, who was smashing to a totally different degree. Look at how Cooper Kupp was last year, winning people leagues. He gets hurt, and teams are like, oh shit, what the hell do I do? And guess what happened when they went to the market? Nobody was interested in buying that old asset at the time.
Someone got Kupp in this league? Because I'll fucking trade for his ass right now.
Believe me, that's what I've been
I'm about to take my team from young to fucking...
I've been trying...
I'm about to trade Bateman and Toney for Cooper Kupp.
Nick's going young.
All right,
to
we got
all
a challenge.
In.
Whoever can get Cooper Kupp first wins.
I'll tell you this much. I've already been in DMs, and Bosco hasn't really been interested. Well, he wants... like he told me Garrett Wilson plus, and I'm like, okay, well...
I'm about to send him like...
Yeah.
Damn.
I was about to send him Drake London or something.
Now, I mean, Drake London plus, maybe he gets he's done, but he wanted me to send him Devontae Smith plus or Garrett Wilson plus, and I'm just like, I like Kupp, but that's just too steep for me because those guys, I think, could still be positional advantages, even being young.
But I'm about to turn over my whole wide receiver room. Fuck it.
And see, this is another dynamic thing, right? Like when I give advice about maybe go trade for this guy, league to league is totally different. This is what you were talking about. Getting down in leagues and knowing the dynamics more. Like Bosco, look at his team. This dude has traded away his future. He's old. He is so locked into contending until the wheels fall off. Mm-hmm. Not that he wouldn't make a deal for him, but it's going to be hard to pluck a guy like Kupp.
That's fair.
And
I didn't.
Yeah. And then you got FSG has Tyreek Hill's another guy in that same range I'm interested in buying, especially with the news cycle going on with him. He hasn't responded, but you look at his team. He's kind of mortgaged futures in. As you start to get, as the league goes on more and more in Dynasty, you start to see a split. Like there's more teams that are committed to winning and are higher teams in value, and then there's more rebuilding teams. So it's like hard in the summer when all those teams that are contending still think they're definitely good. It's hard to buy them.
Yeah, no, I mean it's always gonna be hard because everyone values the player at their ceiling. I feel like at all times.
People also like to value the guy on their team more than
you just get
they
optimistic.
Do on
yeah.
About
what
your
do you
own
got,
guy.
though?
I'm about to send London, Pierre Strong, and a third for Kupp.
I would send that. I mean, I'll be honest with you. There are people right now that would take London straight up ahead of
100%.
Actually, it sounded ridiculous when you said it, but now that I'm thinking about it, Kupp feels like a red flag.
You know what I would
100%.
I would consider there, though?
You know what? I'm getting emotional because we're on a podcast right now. I'm not sending offers.
There it is. There it is.
Think about this. We just made one. Now I'm fucking,
Yeah, you get trade happy. You know, that's good. It's good to get trade happy.
I'm usually sad. Now I'm happy.
Look at this guy, man. We got a deal done. Toney adds some depth. He already still has a pretty good receiver room, in my opinion.
You do have a good. I didn't realize.
I don't think I have a wide receiver one though.
Yeah, but I think in a PPR league that's fine. Like you'll probably get like 13 points a game from all of those guys.
Yeah,
the way Judy finished in the back, I'm not the biggest Judy guy, but the way he finished strong with Russ was actually pretty crazy. I could see him being a wide receiver one.
Well, you got a running back.
So running back, that's more top heavy where I have Eckler and then like Pierce, or Eckler, Pierce, David Montgomery. I did add Gibbs in this last draft, so I have both Detroit running backs. I like both of them individually. It feels weird having them both in a lineup, though.
I think one or both of them will be really good.
Could this be like a Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara type beat?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, now I'm getting super optimistic about my own players.
For sure.
But
send offers.
Yeah, I'm gonna let Austin Eckler just ride into the sunset on my team.
I'm doing that and go fade me too. No one will value him correctly, so
right.
It's just like whatever. Give me another 18 touchdowns for a year.
Yeah,
fuck you
this
guys.
might be it for Austin Eckler, but I'm fine just letting players die.
Eckler kind of feels like he's gonna hang around for a long time.
You think so?
Yeah, because one, like you could just see how he like takes care of himself so well. He also is a dude that like in his worst, like say he turned 30, 31, 32. I feel like he'll become a role player that's really valuable in fantasy. Like even if, Eckler maybe starts to break down a little bit, maybe his carries dwindle from like 200 down to like 75, 80, but I bet he still gets like 80 targets a season, even in his older age years.
So he basically like devolves into Danny Woodhead.
Yes. Yeah. Like I think worst case scenario, you're going to get Eckler as like Danny Woodhead for the last like 2-3 years of his career.
That'd be pretty sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, literally, I think for him as he gets older, especially in that type of a workload too, he probably has a better chance to stay healthy.
Right.
Like
He'll catch 80 passes a year for
his
a while.
age at like a full workloads like he's been taking these last few years. I worry he's going to get an injury.
Eckler's going to go to the Patriots and catch 500 passes.
Hoodie would have he would be James White on steroids.
That's what I mean. That's where my mind went exactly. It's like you don't even need to get more than 50 carries to be like a monster.
Yeah. I mean, he does have that elite pass catching prowess. And when he gets the ball in his hands, he's liable to score anytime he's inside the 50. So I like that.
So who wants to buy Austin Eckler between you two?
I'm out.
Nick's traded out for the day. I think that's really all we got, though, on the league. I don't know if there was anything else you wanted to discuss about the league. I think we covered pretty much everything.
Yeah, no, that was a good breakdown. It's a fun episode to do like this because you get so much context behind the teams and like the way you're thinking about it relative to the other teams in the league. It's like, oh, I'm kind of a contender, but I'm not there yet. Let me grab a guy that like really gets me there now.
See, Mike and I don't do a lot of planning on our shows. We'll do like, all right, we're going to talk about this subject, but we don't sit here and have like a big long note sheet because a lot of times unplanned, some fun things can happen. Like we didn't have, other than the 3 trades and just doing the trade show, we kind of let this happen. And then you got to see the context of the league, right? So we gave you the settings, how it works. We talked about the teams. We talked about the trades that went down. Then we actually happened to have someone here, Toney, that's also in the league, and you got to see an actual trade happen live. And I think
magic.
That's hard to. When you just get a trade on a trade show, I mean, we try to do our best job of talking through different points, like if this team looks like this and whatever context we do have, but it's hard to really give you what your league is without seeing stuff like this. Like that's the context of it. I can't tell you what Toney's going to value. That's on him. That's same for all your league mates. So I think that was a really cool thing to do at the end.
Yeah, that was fun. I think we should definitely put this episode up on our channel too.
Yeah.
Good.
Like we came in here disagreeing about Pittsburgh Steelers wide receivers. We left.
I got a good idea.
Good.
We edit it before you put it up and then be like, no one can put it up on their channel. Hit them with the copyright infringement.
Hit your channel with a strike.
BDGE laying the
Hit you with
smackdown.
a lawsuit.
Nick's out here bodying.
That you want a 5D chest right here.
Yeah, Nick's out here bodying his employees, telling them to come in here and make a trade on set. Then he's taking the footage that's going to be on his channel. He's just bodying everybody.
You don't get to where I am by being nice.
I love it, man.
All right, cool. Well, if you're watching this on my channel, make sure you go follow Adam's channel.
Yeah.
That'll be linked below.
Yeah, you got to go to the South Harmon Fantasy channel to do so. All right, we love you guys. Peace.
Later.